Exclusion to inclusion, supporting all students to be included in education. In this film, there are 4 sections. We start by hearing the voices that often go unheard. Then we hear about the ways that brains work and how this influences behaviour and actions. Next, we visit Henry Hill School in Napier and hear about the neurosequential model in education and the impact that this is having on their community. The final part of this film shares resources that can support decision makers to further their own professional learning.
Take care of our children. Take care of what they hear. Take care of what they see. Take care of what they feel. For how the children grow, so will be the shape of Aotearoa.
I got removed from 2 schools. My mum said it was a shame on the family. Dad would give me hidings, so I took it out on people at school. No one knew, so no one understood.
They didn't really want her at school because they didn't really care about her. She was hard work.
Mum kept crying and Dad didn't talk to me for days. It wasn't even my fault.
If the school wanted to make a difference, they could have found out why I was doing what I was doing. If they found out, then they could have got me some help.
When you go to an exclusion place, you're saying, we don't care about you enough to try and see this through, and that's not good enough.
I had lots of stand down in Year 8 because I found learning hard and the teachers didn't like me. Anytime I asked my friends for help, the teachers yelled at me. I knew I would always be in trouble, so I stopped trying to stop the yelling.
These kids need more, and that takes effort and time. We need to teach these kids the skills they need to be successful.
I can't even drive past the school anymore.
It was really embarrassing. Lots of kids now and still shame me. I tried to ignore them, but some days it's really hard.
We need to understand it's not just about the trauma today, but the impact that trauma has had across multiple generations.
He kākano e ruia mai I rangi ātia, e kore ea e ngaro.
Catherine Burkett has certified as a neurosequential model practitioner with Dr. Bruce Perry. Catherine has over 20 years of extensive experience in this area. In this clip, Catherine prompts us to look at behaviour with a lens that understands the biology of the brain and the reasons why humans react the way that they do in certain situations. Catherine explains the different modes of mental response as red brain, survival instinct, and green brain. Whenever we sense a threat, the red brain overwhelms our green brain and our ability to reason.
Kia ora, ko Catherine Burkett toka wengwa. I am here to give you a quick understanding of behaviour and the control that we have over behaviour. It's just a really interesting way to look at it in a different light, because many of you are making decisions around why did that child do that? What happened? So I want us to start to understand a little bit around the neuroscience and the biology around that behaviour. So I have done my Masters of Educational Psychology. So I've worked a lot with children who are in the education system who didn't quite fit. And then I moved into neuroscience, and now I understand how the brain develops and reacts. So understanding that really helps me put behavior into a different context. That's what I'm sharing with you today. So what I want you to reflect on is, when you have considered, observed, watched, let's just say a young person behave in a way that you didn't think was quite appropriate, we may have talked to them afterwards and said things like, why did you do that? You should have made a better decision. What else could you have done differently? We sort of use a language that, when you think about it, suggests that we have control over the behavior whilst we're doing it. And this is just through all the ways we've been taught, all the ways we've learned. We just sort of see it this way. You must have been in control. But I really want to ask you a quick question and get you to reflect on something. Maybe not now, maybe reflect on it later, but have a think about your behavior when you're in quite a high stress situation. Maybe when you can't find your keys, when you can't remember your password to get into the computer, when you're driving and you're a little bit late and someone does something slightly silly. You may do something, say something, behave in a way, be very oppositional, be very non-empathic. In that moment, you are behaving in a way that, when you reflect, you really didn't have a lot of control over what you did. You'd lost control a while before. So this is what we want to understand if we're considering the behaviour of tamariki rangatahi and saying, what happened there? If we're thinking about a staff member or yourself about why you did something. So what I want to just quickly introduce, and when I say quickly, I mean it because I can train for a few days, quickly introduce the concept of the brain that I use. And I talk about the lower part of the brain being red, the upper part of the brain being green, the lower part of the brain being a survival part of the brain, subconscious, impulsive, irrational. That sort of very 2-year-old, I do what I want when I want because I want sort of thing. And the lower we are, the more selfish and impulsive we are, then we get a little bit higher up. Then the green brain is where we can override impulses, where we can be empathic, where we can do time management, where we can be conscious about our thoughts, where we can do cause and effect, all of those beautiful things that we need when we're considering whether we should or shouldn't do the behaviour. They all live up in the top part of the brain. Really simply, our brain is constantly scanning for safety. Now, when we feel safe, red brain, which is the survival part of our brain, doesn't have much to do. So safety creates a solid, beautiful, supportive red brain and a really engaged green brain, doing all those beautiful green brain conscious thoughts. As soon as we have a sense of danger in our environment, we start to move that energy down to our red brain. And why I say that is because if you lose your keys, you can't find your password when you're driving, those sorts of things, that's danger. Even if you go off to the cafe with your friends and you lose your keys, it's still danger perceived. So what I want you to start thinking about is, when that behavior happened that we're considering, was it in the context of safety? Or was it in the context of danger, and the context of danger from the individual's perspective? And this is something we need to start unpacking, because a lot of our tamariki in our space, especially at the moment with this increased anxiety, increased stress, increased unpredictability in our environment, we're increasing the adult's feeling of unpredictability and unsafety in lots of ways, which then permeates into our environment, which means whānau and teachers and communities are really creating a space that's not 100% safe predictability feeling for our young people. I'm not saying all of you are creating that, but in a generalized sense, this is what is sort of increasing feel in the environment at the moment, which means it's more likely that our young people are activating in classrooms and education systems and homes. They're just a little bit more in danger, not quite so sure. So can you see what that's doing to the brain? Allowing less access to the upper parts, allowing less access to rationality, etc. So when you're thinking about that space, do you believe that those people with the power in that environment created safety? And when I say that respectfully, there's sort of 4 things I use to ask whether you think that young person felt safe. And the 4 things go on a mnemonic list. So I use some boys have mullets. So SBHM, some boys have mullets to remember it. And the S stands for see me. Do you feel that in that environment that person felt validated, seen, accepted? Like, that sort of that they feel like they exist in this space, that they're noticed. So that's the first thing, being seen. The B stands for belonging. Are you my friend or are you my foe? Are you going to help me or hurt me? And so this is something the brain's always asking, the red brain's always asking. And if they don't feel connected, if they don't feel similar, if they feel left out somehow, then that can trigger a sense of danger. And sometimes this happens for our young people if we don't let them involve themselves in something, or they dress differently, or they look different, or they sound different, or those sorts of things. So this is things that can trigger their sense of being not quite so safe. So do you think they felt a sense of connectedness and belonging in this space? H, so some boys have. So H stands for happening. Tell me what's happening. That predictability is really important. And then the M stands for mana. So do you think that young person has a sense of mana in this space? You think about if you're employed in an environment and nobody listens to what you say, nobody respects your opinion, nobody, gives you a sense of contribution to this space. It doesn't feel very good. And so I want us to ask in a really overall sense, do you think SBHM is happening? So being seen, sense of belonging, knowing what's happening and having a sense of mana over that space. There's also all those other elements that create safety, being allowed to vacate from something that's too busy for you, having something sensory to touch or do, or blankets, or being allowed to go for a quick walk to calm down, those sorts of things. This is really complex. This is days and days of training just sort of combined. But what I want us to consider is, do you think in that moment that we are assessing this behavior, do you think in that moment that young person was able to access their green brain? Do you think they were able to make a conscious, logical, considered decision? Because very often in our environments, our young people don't feel safe. And I'm not saying you're putting them in danger. I'm saying they don't feel generalizingly safe. And so quite often they're operating out of their red brain, and they will do a behavior that is impulsive, irrational, selfish. So what we're thinking about is, yes, we do have to talk to them about that behavior. But if we want to change the world, if we want to change people, if we want to help people control behavior, we need to keep people connected to the environments where they feel safe, where they have a sense of being seen, have a sense of belonging, have a sense of predictability of what's happening, have a sense of mana. We need to keep these people connected in these spaces, hold them in these spaces. We know we're going to have some hiccups along the way, but we will see improved regulation as we go. And it will take a long time, and it will take ages, and it will take lots of relational interactions. But what we'll see eventually is we'll see this young person behaving that way less. And if we can look at it that way, instead of taking that one incident and just saying that one incident is what we're judging everything on, we can say, there was that incident, but I remember when this person started, they were very dysregulated. This was happening, that was happening, this was happening. And now they're able to make much better choices. It shows you that they want to. So, and I'm not talking about every young person. Absolutely, there's all variables, but I just want us to start thinking about behavior in a different way. Did we create that sense of safety? And do you think they were making that decision from the green brain? Or do you think it was an automatic activation because they felt unsafe in this environment? So I ask you to consider it in that way, consider it slightly differently. There's a lot more information on my website. There's a lot more information on some podcasts I do. The people you're being supported by have all this information. I just want to flip that thinking and start thinking differently, because if we want to help our communities change, if we want to help our young people grow into people who can regulate themselves, and if I want to get better every day, which I do, I need to recognize this biological neuroscience around the activation of my body and help increase safety. That helps increase controlled behavior. So thanks very much.
At Napier's Henry Hill School, their trauma-informed approach is having a community-wide impact. The community is one with high levels of deprivation, poverty, and intergenerational trauma. Jace Williams, the principal of Henry Hill School, has guided the school on a voyage of discovery in the areas of trauma-informed practice informed by neuroscience. This case study shares and celebrates how these strategies and learnings have had a monumental positive impact on the tamariki, whānau and kaimahi at Henry Hill School and community.
Henry Hill School is a Decile 1 contributing school. The majority of our children come from a suburb, Maraenui. It has the highest deprivation index in Napier. It's a community that's gone through a lot of intergenerational trauma, domestic violence, impacts of gangs, lack of trust in the system. So we've had to work hard at developing those relationships and making sure that we really are that safe place for all our kids and community. As far as neuroscience goes, it's not that these kids don't have the ability to achieve academically, it's that you actually need to be calmed first before you can intake any kind of cognitive content.
You've got 4 parts of your brain, and the bottom is your brainstem. So if you're really down or angry, if your parents are arguing, then you're scared, and then that means you're in your brainstem.
Me ki te rangi hakiroto.
But then if you come to school and then you do yoga, it'll make you go all the way up to the cortex.
Taumatika hakiwaho.
So the neurosequential model has 3 R's. So the first one is regulate. So you need to be calm before you can do anything else. Second one is to relate. So there has to be some type of relationship before you can begin to do the third R, which is reason.
So the second that they enter the door, we just form a circle and we start our yoga. It's a great way for them to start. It gives them the feeling of being safe in a place with people they trust. They feel welcomed.
Kuri whakamuri hakiroto.
Then we do our karakia, which is, again, relational.
Tauraka.
The karakia gives them a good foundation for the day. Our one is written by a previous caretaker. It is in a rhythmic and patterned way. They just know that they're part of a team.
If a child's lost it, our initial mode is to go in and fix that, to awhi them to help heal. But it's like shooting bullets at bulletproof glass. Their words keep bouncing back at us because the first thing we need to do is regulate and calm them.
Te Ahuru Mōwai started from, we had all these native trees in this space that wasn't really being utilised by the kids. Jace had gone overseas and seen sensory spaces over there. We had a lot of kids that when they get dysregulated, they just need a touch and they need to move and they need to ground themselves. It is a space that they can use away from everybody else, reconnect with Papatuanuku, connecting with Tāne Mahuta.
The school's in a really pivotal and unique situation where if we're going to do some learning, let's learn some life skills. There's definitely been more of an emphasis on health and wellbeing in terms of a holistic approach, and particularly with focusing on our environmental health and what that means for our children.
We looked at our lunch boxes, looking at the waste within our lunch boxes, how can we have healthier lunches, and then we established the Marakai, and the kids loved it. Right from, growing the seeds into seedlings, into putting it into the Marakai. We're taking care of Papatuanuku by reducing our waste. In return, she's going to give us this beautiful kai that's going to be delicious.
With your cartoon, Taurus, who's the main character in it?
Mr. Mechanical.
Mr. Mechanical, awesome. All right, I think it's time for a brain break, guys. Meet me over in the middle. So a brain break is essentially a way of resetting our brain after a sustained period of learning. After about 15 to 30 minutes, the human brain reaches a plateau where we can't actually take in any more learning. So a brain break is a way of kind of saying, sweet, let's regulate ourselves, let's do a relational activity that's rhythmic and patterned.
There's one with the alternate nostril breathing, and I'm pretty sure it's called Nadi Shodan Pranayama. And then there's the palm dance that we made up.
So the neuroscience behind it is that when you cross over the midline in your body, forms a synapse, and then that allows your brain, like both cerebral hemispheres, to connect together. That sort of jogs your brain into action for the next task.
The PLD for us gave us license to try different things, to think out of the box, and to know that these intuitive things we've always done or things we've introduced over time actually are having an impact, and it goes beyond the academic data or lack of transience data or having less stand-downs and suspensions. But it honestly just gave us license to start pushing things, to have those difficult conversations with each other around our practice. If you all think about someone in your classrooms that's been challenging or perhaps is affected by trauma, and think just about their fine motor skills.
Yeah, I think there's one boy in particular where his fine motor skills are lacking.
We've always talked about wanting intergenerational change, and this is the first time we've felt like we're close to seeing the fruits of that labour.
The kids, they love it. They see their parents, their significant others showing up, and a lot of them wait at the door. And so we talk just a lot more of a presence, I think, in the school, which is what we've been hoping for from parents and wider extended family as well.
Something we always preach here is we want our kids here, and even our kids at home, to be better than we are. We want our kids here to be better parents than their parents. In turn, their moko will be these amazing kids that'll make these massive changes in the community.
The neurosequential model of education is a developmentally informed, biologically respectful approach to working with at-risk children. It emphasises the 3 steps: regulate, relate, then reason. This is the process of moving from the red brain to the green learning brain in order to support re-regulation. Our ultimate goal is for the tamariki and rangatahi involved to be able to internalise these techniques and develop the capacity of self-regulation. There are a wide range of resources available to support decision makers to take the next steps on this journey of discovery. A list of some of these podcasts, interviews, articles, books, and study guides are available alongside this film or by emailing exclusion to inclusionnz@gmail.com.